chair. And Councilman Roberts, you are number 4. It'll make sense shortly.
Appreciate it.
Please like and share if you're joining us on tonight. We have an awesome conversation preparing to happen. Good evening, everyone joining us in the watch party. Okay, so I'm gonna get started. So to folks that are joining us on Facebook land or Zoom, welcome to each and every one of you. I am Alderman Brackeen Jr. I am from the great city of New Haven, Connecticut, where I serve on the city council and have served for 4 terms, which is about 8 years at this point. Tonight, I will serve as your host and moderator for this awesome event. I too serve on the Connecticut leadership team for Vice President Joe Biden's campaign. And tonight's a special night because we are launching the Connecticut chapter for League 46, which consists of 3 teams: students for Biden, young professionals for Biden, and young elected officials for Biden. It's a robust network of students, professionals, and young elected officials that are mobilized across the country to ensure that we work together to make sure that Donald Trump is a one-term president. This is probably one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime, and we know that Joe Biden realizes that young Americans are going to be a powerful part of the coalition as we build a coalition to November. And I will also say that for the sake of this conversation, I am personally endorsing Joe Biden, but everyone that's going to join this call, they have their own personal beliefs, and they can have room to do that tonight if they like. If not, that's fine too. We just want to have an open and honest dialogue, in particular with our Black and Latinx community, young professionals statewide, and really trying to dive in as to what our priorities are here in the state of Connecticut, and as well as what we'd like to see happen in terms of mobilizing what many call the Obama coalition. Many of us that are on here are actually very much a part of that movement and what that looks like. We know it's a different time and a different day, but certainly many people want to know how we can replicate that movement and what that looks like. So at this time, I would like the opportunity to introduce our panelists for tonight, and you may begin.
Well, I guess since I drew the first stick, the longest, and I was here first, it's me. So, hello everybody. I'm Corey Paris. I am the president of the Connecticut Young Democrats. If you ask any other Young Democrats organization in the country who is the best, they will tell you it's Connecticut. If they don't, they're dishonest with themselves. So we're committed to ensuring that young people 14 to the ages of 36 are registered to vote. They're engaged in the political process, either as organizers, campaign managers, or candidates themselves. And that they build a platform that young people all over the state can support in an effort for us to build a stronger political party for a stronger America in the future. Not only that, but outside of that realm of work, I'm also a development director for Children's Learning Centers in Fairfield County. So I raise all of the money for one of the state's largest early childhood education programs. And why that is important, it is because when we talk about the disparities in education across this country, and most notably in this state, it's important to know that most of our children are segregated in the schools that they attend, K through 12. And we are throwing a lot of money at the K through 12 sectors of the education system, when the most important time for us to put money in investing in our young people is at the ages of 0 to 5. So as I endorse Joe Biden, as we have this conversation this evening, I'm really happy to make sure that we think about the future, which are those young people who have not yet been educated. We think about the present, who are those young people who are out on the front lines protesting and bringing awareness and organizing to all the major major issues of our time. And then we think about also the past that we still have to take consideration of. And those are the older generations who have fought the good battles and good fights, but need a lot of protection right now as we make sure that they enter their golden years stronger as ever. And so that's what I hope to accomplish tonight in this conversation. I thank you all for having me.
I think I'm next. My name is Trenee McGee. I am at the core an artist and an activist. I am an actor. I think that's important to share because a lot of times people believe that in order to be in politics or be active in their communities, that they have to go into perspective fields that prepare them for that. Well, the stage and scripts and connecting with characters and shaping and molding the next generation of theater goers is what prepared me for politics. I am currently on West Haven City Council. I'm the youngest to be elected, so I, pray my strength. It is quite a journey, something that my passion, my compassion, my understanding of people through characters, learning characters actually really set the precedent for me to be in this seat. I am an acting coach. I launched my own production company in the beginning of this year, and I work with young professional actors or actors who are explorers who want to learn more about acting because that's, a passion of mine. And I also am very active in the community and having conversations with younger millennials, because I myself am a younger millennial and Gen Z, that are really helping me to shape and understand and see the future and even the present that we are living in. One of the things that I think is so essential that we talk about, and Corey sort of touched on this, is educational and informative resources that really help to prepare the next generation of voters. I see a hunger for knowledge, a hunger for true history. People really want to know who they are, where they come from, what they're about. Figures that have become idols to our country, people are now discovering have actually not done good things. And I know that might sound a little silly, but we live in America. So keeping my ear close to younger constituents and younger community leaders and the theater world, one of the things that I hear a lot is generational wealth. A lot of young people are wanting to learn about how they can begin to establish themselves financially so that they can build and grow for the next generations. How can I prepare for my grandchildren? What stocks can I invest in? In the theater, actors are leaving acting and they want to become producers because they want to learn capitalism. They want to be at the top, making decisions for those to come. And so that's something that I hope that we get to talk about, and I know we will. And I'm just looking forward to such a great conversation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Erick Russell. I serve as the pleasure of serving as vice chair of the state Democratic Party here in Connecticut, and I also serve as vice chair of the Association of State Democratic Committees for the Eastern Region under the DNC. I would like to first thank Alder Brackeen for putting this together and for all of the panelists for participating in this tonight. I'm looking forward to a great conversation around this. In addition to serving with the state party, I'm an attorney by trade, doing mostly work kind of in the business and finance area. And I also do a lot of advocacy work for the LGBT community. And so, I'm really excited about this conversation. I wholeheartedly endorse Joe Biden. I'm excited about this election cycle and the work that we can do together. But I also am excited about the energy and the passion that we've seen all across the country right now, talking and the conversations that really relate to meaningful and systemic change in this country. I think so many young people are engaged right now, and they're taking real ownership of this moment, and they're excited about getting involved. And I think from the party role, I'm excited about how we can kind of harness that and move forward together. But also when we're having these conversations, how we can make sure that we're listening to everybody and putting together policy that's going to be there to help move everyone forward. So I think specifically tonight, I'm really excited about having conversations around criminal justice reform, LGBT issues, and then how to just really look into addressing some of the systemic issues that we haven't for so long in this country. So thank you again.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kadeem Roberts. Norwalk, Connecticut, born and raised. Listed right now as the youngest African-American ever to be a city councilman in history. Blessed to be here. Legit, I come from a background of many, heart of the projects, but made it out and successful. I definitely am here for all type of conversations. We've been doing this for a long time now, for the past couple of weeks, but this is, dear to my heart of what's going on. I'm definitely looking forward to police reform. I'm looking forward to disenfranchisement and everything that's going on in the communities. But I'm more so looking forward to, building with, those that look like me, that come from the same background as me, and that understand, that the system was never for us. We had to make a way to get to where we are today. But more so, I'm just thankful to be on this panel. And like I said, little background, went to Virginia Union University. It's the first HBCU in the South. Came back up to Connecticut. I got a master's in public administration, local and state government. And ever since then, I've just been going at it in the field of politics. Norwalk is the 6th largest in the state of Connecticut. And we are not small. We are very big, and the heart is still pumping. And we are definitely activated as far as especially what's going on in the city, in the state, in the world right now. And I'm definitely not too happy with what's going on, but definitely pushing forward to it. And, I got demands. My city got demands. And we won't stop till those demands are met.
Eva.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Honestly, this is such a privilege for even being invited and considered in this conversation that's so important. I am Eva Bermudez Zimmerman. I was born and raised in Hartford. Most of you know me from my quick claim to fame running for lieutenant governor and being the first person of color to get as far as I did ever running for such a large office, an office of such stature. Unfortunately, I was not successful, but we do have good leadership there, so we have to support our Democratic brothers and sisters. And in this conversation of color and the narrative of what's happening and the chaos that's happening, I will remind a lot of familiar faces here that I'm from what is a very white town. There's only in Newtown less than 4% people of color. My first week in welcoming to this town was being called the N-word and being told to get off the road and being smoked out by a pickup truck. But I persisted. And with my brothers and sisters of POC, I had those conversations of, do I go back to Hartford where I feel like I belong and I don't have to break constantly those barriers? Or do I stay in this community and make a new home with my spouse? I obviously stayed. 10 years later, I'm still here. And oddly enough, it seems that no matter what we do as people of color, we're always circling back to that reality. Where do we belong? Why do we feel like we have to constantly prove ourselves? Why do we feel like people who are calling us eloquent are just not quite on the same leveling playing field as us? So I'd love to share those comments and criticisms with you and expand that conversation, but that's who I am, and a girl from Newtown who's politically involved, just trying to do the right thing. Yep.
Thank you all so very much. And now I'd like to introduce our special guest for tonight. He served as the Southern Regional Political Director for the Joe Biden campaign, and he's all over the nation. I'm not sure if that's the correct role at this time, but we have Vincent Evans, who has joined us on tonight.
Thank you. Daryl, and thank you for your leadership in the hosting, not only tonight's call, but you've hosted a number of activities over the course of the month. So I want to thank you on behalf of all of us at Biden for President for your leadership and your friendship. I'm so glad to be with each of you. Like Daryl said, I'm Vincent. I serve as Vice President Biden's Northern and Southern Political Director on our national staff. One of the hats I do also head up in the campaign is I work with our Young Americans program, which we recently just relaunched, called League 46. And in specific, I work with young elected officials. I'm so glad to see the members of the council here today, all of you whose stories I have read. Councilman Roberts, I know it was a homecoming for you when you went back home to get elected. I went to Florida A&M, so you went to a good HBCU, just not the best HBCU, but I will not hold that against you, brother. And Councilmember McGee, it's good to see you. Eva, and I had the opportunity to read your story and share it with some of our staff today, coming within 10 points, I know, of winning your statewide election. We've got to get more people of color elected statewide across the country, not just in Connecticut, but everywhere. I talked to the Lieutenant Governor of Michigan the other day. I'm often on the phone with Garland Gilchrist. Garland is one of just a handful of African Americans serving in statewide elective office. My home state of Florida, went home before coming to work for the vice president. I worked in Congress, but took a leave of absence to go back home to Florida to help my old friend Andrew Gillum, and we fell just short in that race trying to elect him governor. There's not a single African American governor in the South. There's never been an in the country, and there's never been an African American governor in the South. And so we've got a lot of work to do. Jamie Harrison, as you know, is running in South Carolina. We've got African Americans, an African American candidate running in Georgia for the U.S. Senate, a host of members of Congress running. I'm forgetting some. I do this all day, but sometimes, you get so into it, you forget some of the candidates. We have a tremendous amount of folks on the ballot this year who are running not only just statewide, but in their districts. And so I'm thankful to be with you all tonight as a part of this conversation because, one, it's important. And then two, I recognize, and I know Vice President Biden recognizes, we got a lot of work to do, folks. And what has certainly been laid to bear during this COVID, when we see the disproportionate effect it's had on community of color, and certainly what we've seen since the unfortunate killing of George Floyd, is these problems did not start with Donald Trump. We all know that. And they will not end because we elect Joe Biden this November. So it won't be a perfect change. I just believe it'll be a perfect start to a new beginning. We have an opportunity in this particular candidate to start to move the needle forward. And it's going to take a whole lot of push and pull from us all working together. Vice President Biden, particularly when it comes to young people, and I can tell you, I tell people all the time, I'm not telling you what I heard, I'm telling you what I see up close. I'm telling you when I'm with him in private, what I know to be true. Young people are absolutely close to his heart. Joe Biden ran for the United States Senate at 29, taking on major feat. No one said he could win, and he ended up winning. But before that, he served like council members McGee and Roberts in local office on the new county council. People always forget that. Joe Biden served in local office before he ever went to the United States Senate. And so he gets it in a real way. I will tell you, these past several weeks have presented a real opportunity for the vice president to do a whole lot of listening. He would tell you that if he were here. That's not just a talking point from me. He's done a whole lot of listening. He's done it personally with the staff of color. We've shared several personal moments with him to explain how we're feeling, how we're doing, what we want to see from him this campaign, and what we want to see in a Biden White House. And then he's done the same thing, talking to historically Black college and university presidents, going to Instagram to hold a round table with young African Americans on the Shade Room. I don't know that a presidential candidate has ever been on the Shade Room, and certainly not they've only been around in modern times. So I don't know that any candidate has ever been on the Shade Room virtually on Instagram. We are pushing the boundaries of where we've been and where we can go. And then I also think it's important. I tell people all the time, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. And one of the things I do in these conversations is, and I tell I tell people that look like each of us on this call and that are a part of our age, that millennial Gen Z, you don't want to have me come on here and recite a whole lot of talking points about Joe Biden's position, because you get it. You get very clearly that Donald Trump is Joe Biden is the complete opposite of Donald Trump. We get that Donald Trump's not the guy, but it's not enough. It's not enough to tell you why you shouldn't vote, why you ought to vote against Donald Trump. I got to tell you why you ought to vote for Joe Biden. And a part of that is when I say I'd rather see a sermon than hear one in a day, what are the tangible things? I won't go through all of them, but one of the things that I think leadership requires is for you to have a moral compass and to stand up and speak truth to power, particularly in moments when it is required. We've seen over the past many weeks that folks have got to stand up and speak truth to power. And it's why shortly after what we saw of the protests around the country, particularly by young people of color, Vice President Biden came here to Philadelphia, where our national headquarters is. He's just a few minutes away in Delaware, and he gave a speech. And when he talked about the anguish that Black Americans are rightfully feeling, and then he called for action. One of the things we called on this month is the Congress this month should ban chokeholds in America. He's called on the Congress to move this month. We got 5 more days in the month. He'd sure like for him to move. We've seen over the past many days, Senator Booker, Senator Harris, and others in the Congress trying to get a compromise in the Senate to push forward legislation that the Democrats can support, that all of us can support. But he's called for action now. He's called for us to get a national standard use of force between police departments. One of the ways we're going to solve this is we've got to get we got to agree to a set of standards here amongst all police departments. And so he's called for national standard use of force. He's called for more training. He's called for us to get cops out of their cars and onto the street. Some of these things you've heard before, but some of these things have been brought about to the extent that we can honor the life of George Floyd and what it meant. He is certainly, George Floyd, his memory is certainly helping us move the needle. But I also know that's not enough either, right? We've got a lot of pushing and a lot of work to do. And so I will close in saying, these conversations are important to us. That is why we stood up our new Young Americans program, so that Joe Biden can meet young people where they are. And if they're on Instagram, that's where we're going. That's why we went and did the Shade Room. If they're on TikTok, well, we're headed to TikTok too. We're learning and we're teaching. We're acknowledging. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. What I can say absolutely about Joe and Jill Biden is they care deeply. They care deeply. The level of empathy that Joe Biden displays is not something that for him is it's not mechanical. It's real. I've seen him again in those private moments. He gets it. And it comes from having lost a wife, having lost a daughter early in life, being a single father for a while, and then just 4 or 5 years ago, losing a son to brain cancer. He gets that this moment is different, and he understands that he has a significant role. The next president of the United States will inherit several crises, I believe. One, they will likely inherit a depressed economy of some sorts. The country saw Joe Biden 12 years ago deal with the depressed economy. They know he knows how to solve that. The next president will also likely inherit some sort of pandemic that is still amongst us in COVID-19. We saw Joe Biden handle that with the Ebola virus during the Obama administration. The next president will also deal with an environmental crisis where we've been told that we've got just years to act, to get our act together. Joe Biden formulated and pushed for the first climate bill in 1976 before it was the cool thing to do. He gets the issue. But the fourth crisis that I believe that the next president will inherit will be one of racism and racial inequality in this country. And unlike the previous three, it will not just be enough for a policy or a plan, because the fourth one requires you to speak truth to power. It requires you to change the hearts and minds of men and women. And that is a larger task than just the three three previous that a White House can do. It will not be enough just for the president or the vice president or a White House staff. It is going to require the whole of us. And in order to do that, knowing that the president, he or she himself cannot do it alone, it is going to require a leader who can bring the country together. And that is what he has said from the outset of this campaign. His greatest ability and strength is that he can unite the country as we seek to restore the soul of the nation. And then we can begin to heal the divides, and then we can push forward. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm thankful to Erick and Corey and Trenee and Kadeem and Daryl and Eva, all of you for creating this space, knowing full well that everybody watching tonight is not there yet, but that's the point. For us to get there slowly but surely, chipping away till November. I do not, and I'll close in saying this, I do not take the opportunity lightly to sit in this space. If my colleague Simone Sanders, our senior advisor, were here tonight, she would tell you the same thing. We are actually being intentional. So when I get a call from Daryl and others, hey, I need you on this call, they're not all there yet, I come because I know that this work is not going to be paid just through lip service of voting for Joe Biden. You need more than that. It's time that we put a down payment and that we, the people, truly includes all of us. And so there are Black staffers like me who are in this space every day making the case. And I can tell you, we have a receptive audience. If no one else, we have it from the candidate. And ultimately, that's what matters because that's whose name's on the ballot. So thank you all for allowing me to be with you tonight.
Vincent and Daryl and folks, if you don't mind me just cutting in for a second. Vincent said a lot about the experience of Joe Biden. And I just want to speak to his character for a moment. Out of every politician I've ever met, and I've met a lot of politicians, I've worked for a lot of politicians, Joe Biden is probably one of the most courageous and most gracious men and people, really, that I've ever met before in my life. And I met him in person at Western Connecticut State University when I was a student there, and I was working at the Clinton Foundation at the time. They brought me up to a holding room to meet him. He instructed the Secret Service to have me pass everyone in line. This long line of people waiting to see him to come straight upstairs. So I did. When I get there, Joe Biden says, "Corey Paris," with his arms wide open, and I don't know if I'm about to lose my heart's about to jump out of the chest. I didn't know what to do. I had to remember if I paid taxes that year because I didn't want anything that the IRS to come out and get me right then and there. But he hugs me, he looks at my tie, he says, "That's a great tie." He's sitting there, he's hugging me. And for the next 15 minutes, as staffers tried to get Joe Biden to move the line along, he said to them, I'm still having a conversation. He listened to my story as an independent student, as I put myself through school, as I faced a lot of adversity in that process. He listened to my hopes and dreams to enter politics and to do the work that we're doing right now to continue making this a more perfect nation. And I told him how much my grandmother loved him, how she changed her television so she could get high def to see him at the State of the Union because she thinks that Joe Biden has the nicest smile. So we take the picture. And as I walk away, he says, "Your grandmother, is she still alive?" I said, "Oh, yeah, she's in Kansas." He said, "We'll get her on the phone." He calls my grandmother and talks to my grandmother for the next 15 minutes on the phone. There was a little flirtation. I do not want to cause any issues between Jill and Joe Biden, but I will say there was a little flirtation. But let me tell you something. He had promised my grandmother a few things, and he delivered on those things by writing her a very sweet note and a picture, an autographed photo, which hangs up in her home today. But just talk to her about Medicare and talk to her about her hopes and dreams for her Black grandson and what that might look like in the United States of America. Folks, politicians don't do that. And certainly the occupant in the White House right now does not do that. But Joe Biden, for God's sure, does that. And that's why he also needs to be president come January 20th, 2021.
Woo, I feel like I'm at a rally. The energy. I don't even know where to go right now, except to say that obviously this is almost a pivotal moment. It's consequential, as I said in the beginning. And as Vincent so eloquently put it, we as young adults, we have to drive this election again. We are needed. Our voices are needed. The platform has been created for us in order to engage in this way, reaching our own spaces. No, this is not about competition. This is about, hey, look, I can do this too. Just as easy as I put on this Zoom call, anyone can go to that Joe Biden website, hit Action Center, and I'm telling you, everything is there. I mean, it's as easy as you can get it. But I will want to drive back to some of the issues that were raised in our introductions that I know we want to get on the table. Now, I also want to note that there are super important individuals on this call, and folks will be in and out in the conversation. So if you're watching us live, you know, you'll see the boxes continue to move around. It's okay. We're all just going to keep the conversation going. So we mentioned as young adults, Black and Latinx individuals that are on this call tonight, many issues that we want to see raised in this election. In particular, we are in a unique moment in history. I'm calling it almost the second American Revolution. We are in a time that we're so close to the issue that I don't even think we realize it. There's a pivoting moment where we are going to turn systematic racism, just get it out of here. And we just need to be able to work in this moment diligently. And I know that many of us raise some of the issues, and I'm going to encourage each and every one of you on this call to feel free to mute and unmute yourself if you feel moved to speak. What are those issues that we'd like to ensure are at the table?
I guess I'll jump in just to get it started, but I think this is probably a little bit of a cop-out of an answer, but I think when we start talking about race and we start talking about kind of this moment in time and the energy and momentum that's behind it, I think the first thing that we have to do is reckon with our history as a country, right? And we have to, I think as a country, we need to acknowledge that history. We need to own that. I think we need to own the fact that we haven't educated our citizenship about a lot of the real aspects of history. I think especially when it comes to African American history. And so we need to do that, right? And it's hard to address a lot of these issues if we're going to pretend as if they don't exist. And then when we start having conversations about what it looks like to actually resolve them, I think we also have to realize that because of the way that the system was created, it was intended in a lot of ways to oppress our community in every aspect of life. So when we start talking about systemic racism, we are talking about, I mean, it's education, it's criminal justice, it's housing, it runs the gambit, economics. I know Trenee mentioned, building generational wealth and the conversations around that. I mean, we have to acknowledge that most of my colleagues' parents, right, bought houses in the 70s and 80s, and that's where they built up generational wealth to send their kids, that paid for their kids to go through college and, bought their next home, and runs down the list. Well, a lot of our families didn't have that opportunity because of redlining and because banks wouldn't allow for Black families to get mortgages. So it's, the reason I said it's a cop-out is because it's everything. Everything has to be on the table. We have to have conversations around all of these issues. And we have to acknowledge the impact that it's actually had on our communities before I think we can look into making real systemic change.
Can I just second that? And I think that's why this gives us such a unique opportunity to begin to educate young people. Literally, Vincent, I'm going to send every single young constituent who has contacted me and asked me, but why? But why should I vote this way? But how? And, I'm going to send this to them after, because I think it's so important for them to see politicians as three-dimensional people who have experienced struggle, people who have experienced oppression, people who have experienced hardship. Because a lot of times what we see, obviously, are masked individuals, some of who take speech classes to convey emotion in a way that they want you to believe them. But I think we're in such a unique position because we have an opportunity to share with younger voters and to help them to understand what it means to vote. When I've gone door to door and I've talked to voters between the ages of 18 and about 27, a lot of them sort of knew either they were voting the way in which their parents have always, or they were voting completely opposite because they know they didn't agree with their parents. But there weren't any educative or informative reasons behind why they were voting the way they were voting. And then I learned that there are a lot of younger voters who are very passionate and they're working together. They're coming together and they're leading protests around the country and around the state of Connecticut, and they have this fire and they know what they want to change, and now they're learning how to change it. They're learning how to actually create action and put the, hit the pavement, boots on the ground type of work. And I think one of the things that's so important with understanding that we need to have these conversations is also, like Erick said, addressing systemic racism. And I see light bulbs go off in people where they realize racism is not just white. It's not a white, it's everyone against a system. Like you said, education, medicine. Just recently, a young woman reached out to me and said, my friend was pregnant and she tweeted about a hospital mistreating her, and 2 weeks later she went and had the baby, and the baby lived but she died. And now I realized that this is systemic racism. So people are now having enlightening moments where they're realizing that it far surpasses just like a white and black thing. And I think it was Trayvon Martin's mom who said, I saw her live, and she said she said, I have to be honest with you, it wasn't politicians at the time, it wasn't people in power, it wasn't people with money, it was college kids who marched outside of their classrooms and their dorms, and they ignited a revolution that opened up the conversation for racism, that opened up the conversation and gave put attention to something that we often didn't talk about. And I think being in this sort of like in this space, I've had to share with people, instead of deflecting, let's reflect. Let's think about the things that affect people within our communities, within marginalized communities. Let's think about it. Let's do better, read, grow in knowledge, and then implement change and hold each other accountable. And I'm starting to see that happen now. But in having this conversation, I think it brings awareness to how we, even as individuals, can be like distribution centers of knowledge and insight and information to better position the next generation of voters.
To echo that, I would add, maybe we can start with sharing Kimberly Jones's video. I think it was very poignant, very clear about our history, concise. I've never seen a video that highlighted the struggles of being a person of color and talked about the difficulties of us not being able to achieve when history has basically put so many barriers there. So I will echo that and add the Kimberly Jones video.
I definitely agree with what everybody said. It's definitely clear. I believe that education is key as well. But these right here need to happen. In order to get comfortable, you got to get uncomfortable. These conversations need to happen 24/7. It's legit that we live in an era in a modern day where George Floyd is now Emmett Till. Like, I don't understand. I show people that and I say that and people go, wow, what do you mean? And I say, do you understand that Emmett Till situation happened years ago? And now we're transforming it to where George Floyd is now. It should never be anything. It should have changed already. We live in an environment where people don't teach their kids how to change a tire anymore. They teach their kids when you get pulled over by the police, put your hands on the steering wheel. It's a different type of environment we live in. And it kind of scares me because sometimes you don't know, like, God forbid you want to make it home. You don't know if you're going to make it home at night. And that's like a major key right now. So policy, police reform, things like that need to be touched on. It just needs to be addressed, and it needs to start with, pushing the needle forward. Education is key as well, but parenting, home. Your home is important. You spend 365 days in a year within getting taught by your teachers. But then when you go home, your parents is a shelter. They're putting that roof over your head. They're explaining to you what it should be and what it should not be. But definitely we gotta tap into the minds of the youth. I seen a caption the other day. It said, "You mess with the wrong generation." Legit. I've never seen these much youth outside marching. I had two big protests in the city I led, And legit, I've never seen this much youth out here marching and stating why they're upset, what they want to do, what they want to see. And it's amazing. And it's crazy that in 2020, we got COVID-19. And it took us this long to realize that you got to be stuck in the house to realize we need to make a change. So, I mean, that's where I believe when you start.
I think we're all students of history. And I think one thing that what we have to tell young people is this: America elects personalities. We elect a personality to basically be comfortable with for the next 4, probably 8 years. But the ultimate goal and platform and policies and obviously the fabric of this nation within that administration is made by the American people. And if you think about this historically, what's evident is you think about civil rights. John Kennedy was a personality, but it took Martin Luther King Jr. being arrested and released from jail for him to make sure that he understood the importance of civil rights. And then civil rights became a major focal point of his work. You think about in 1976, the women who fought to have the Equal Rights Amendment become a major focal point in American politics. And these women on both the left and the right fought to make sure that this case was closed, this cause was taken up. Shirley Chisholm had made the case for it. She even tried to get herself back on the ticket again as a vice presidential candidate. And finally, what they were fighting for, to get representation on the Supreme Court, to get more representation in Congress, to get more equity for those women that worked in Congress and were harassed by their bosses in Congress. That happened because the American people rolled up their sleeves and said there's no more. So the power right now of the presidency, there's no one person bigger than the office of the presidency. The people, the indomitable will of the people is the power in the United States. And we as young people, and if you think about it, look at Donald Trump. This is a man that came into office, who had been a Democrat for many years, who had been a Republican, who had been an independent, who had been his own political party of Trump, whatever he wants to be, the Orange Party, let's call it, and now he's a Republican. Donald Trump did not know one thing, hardly one thing that the Republican Party stood for. Not hardly one thing. He said, let the platform committee at the convention, go and do whatever you need to do. I'll do whatever you all want me to do. And who made that decision? Delegates. And the delegates from the local parties and from the state parties and from the voters basically told Donald Trump what they wanted in office. And if you ever notice, Donald Trump will say one thing, and when it looks like that he's losing his base, he'll switch back and do whatever he wants because his base has power. And it's time that our base and our people and all those who feel disenfranchised in this process find their power and find their voice. Joe Biden may not be everyone's first choice. Joe Biden has said this. He was Joe Biden's first choice, but she said in an interview recently, he may not be your first choice. You may not be in love with him, but you have to vote for him. And I wish that she had expounded upon that, because Joe Biden is this leader of our times right now to get America restored back to where we need to be. But never in the history of this country have we had someone who has come out so early to say that he will only consider putting a woman on the ticket. And now the United States of America has the opportunity, the Democratic Party has the opportunity to have at least 3 women of color, Black women, be considered to be vice president of the United States. We may not always get the person that we fall in love with. Republicans fall in line, Democrats fall in love, but I believe that we can fall in love with the power that we have as a people to change the fabric of this country by telling the next administration what we want and how we want the governing to take place in this country.
Yeah, and Corey, you're right. This is an inflection moment in the country, no question about it. We are at a serious inflection moment. Kadeem, brother, I love what you said about, and I have to get that caption from you about they mess with the wrong generation. That's something we say all the time. You mess with the wrong one, right? You got the wrong one. Trenee, you said something that I think is so true and so important in this next 131 days. We've got to do a better job, us as candidates and campaigns, to tell our story and make the connection. For instance, I hear young people say today, well, I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden because he doesn't support Medicare for all. But if you sit down and talk to most of them and you have a conversation about what they care about healthcare and why they care about it so much, what you find is you can make the connection. So oftentimes in these conversations, I'm able to sit down with young people today and say, look, he may not be for Medicare for all in the way that other candidates have said it or the way it's been presented, but as his core, he cares deeply about healthcare. Sometimes we diverge on what path to go, but we all agree that there's a path that we can get there. So I would submit that Joe Biden's plan for healthcare was the best in the primary. Obviously, enough primary voters agreed. But what I also try to do is make that connection and say, look, Joe Biden knows what it's like to get a call one day that your wife and your daughter are now killed, and you got two young boys who are deeply injured. And he was a single dad at that very moment, and he needed that health care to get through those next many months as his boys recover. The average person can understand that. He knows what it's like to have a child dying of brain cancer, him and Jill Biden, and be wondering how we're going to get through this. But thank God for all the problems you have to worry about. Having good quality health care is not one of them. So while I may not agree with you on exactly how we get there, you got plan A and I got plan B, we agree that there is a common goal here. And I think I tend to believe that most people, as I travel around the country virtually these days, are hearing that message. We've got to continue to do a better job, certainly as a campaign, and we are. That's why, again, these conversations are important. So we're trying to do that to get that and make that connection, talk about the fact that he put forth the first climate bill, and those are important. So Trenee, I appreciate you raising that about taking this video back, particularly to young people, so that they can begin to make that connection. So again, because it's not enough just to tell them who to vote against, I got to tell them why, who they should be voting for, not just for Joe Biden, but for candidates across Connecticut and candidates across the country. And then the last thing I'll say is, Kadeem, you said something that is so true about the moment that we are in and what it means to bring the fullness of our experiences to this work. I think we are all feeling it. It is literally in me. I go to these rooms every day in this campaign, and y'all, I bring the authentic me to the table. Beard and all, Black man from the South. I know what it's like to be driving down the street and grip that steering wheel a little harder because the police are behind you, and you're praying to God, not this time. Y'all know what it's like to just be praying that they go past you, and you're hoping that you can just get home. I know what that's like. I know what it's like. I remember being in college at Florida A&M, Ben Crump, who I call America's civil rights attorney, representing all of these families. Well, Ben's from Tallahassee. I went to school in Tallahassee. I consider Ben a brother and a mentor. And over the last couple of days talking to Ben said something, and he said it in the New York Times the other day. Vince, I feel like I'm running out of time. Because every time the phone rings these days for Ben, it's another family calling to ask him for his services. I was talking to Ben a couple days after George Floyd, and we were talking about it, and he said, in a month we'll be here again. Days later, I called Ben back, and Rayshard Brooks had just happened. So these days, when he picks up the phone, he himself, a father, he's feeling it because it's literally on his doorstep. It's in all of our faces right now. And so there are so many issues, from generational wealth to healthcare to education that folks are brought up, to policing reform to voting. We've got so much to do that we've got a whole lot of room for folks to lean in right now. We have a lot of room. So I say to folks out there listening tonight, even if you're not there yet, know that this work needs you right now more than ever. Like, regardless of who you're voting for president, and I'm clear about who you need to vote for, and I think you're clear too, but we literally have enough space for everybody to come right now. Like, I tell my friends all the time, my friends in the Dream Defenders from Florida, Philip Agnew and all, we all have a role to play. Now, my ministry at one point was sitting in the streets with Ben Crump, him telling me that the bail money was on the way if I just sat in the middle of the street a little bit longer and fought in the protest. My ministry has changed a little. I put on a blue shirt. I come on the Zoom calls. I talk about the policy. Kadeem, Trenee, y'all know it. Eva, you know it. Y'all can still get out there if you need to, right? Y'all can still put on the all black, but you also understand that we needed some folks in the inside. We needed y'all to go legislate on the county council and the city council. Even we need you to be talking about the policies statewide, Erick and Corey. Like, so we all have a role in this ministry work is what I call it. And some are going to be on the outside pushing really hard. And then some of y'all going to be on the inside with me, and we're going to be looking at the protesters like, all right, y'all, we got you. We carrying it with us. I talk to our Congressional Black Caucus members all the time. That's the balance they got right now, right? They got Karen Bass, one of the most progressive members in the country from California. And she was saying the other day how she's got to balance this policing bill right now, right? She knows what's realistic and what she can get through right now. She's also listening to the progressives out there because guess what? She started as an activist. It's not that folks have forgotten, and those who do, we replace them. But we also got to find how we all move and dance. I call it a dance, y'all. We're just dancing together because we all have a singular goal that we know. And a part of that is being strategic. I need you to be out here pushing and pressuring and yelling and doing all of that while I'm in here on the inside moving. So this work, there's enough room for all of us in this work. And I know y'all know that. So I'm talking to all of those that are listening tonight. There is plenty of work for everybody to be doing.
Absolutely. And I believe that the Biden campaign has provided the perfect platform to do it. And through the efforts of the new program for Young Americans, League 46, tonight is the launching of the Connecticut chapter of League 46. And each and every one of us on this call, in some way, shape, or form, you know, actually, we are all history makers on this call, for sure. I mean, barrier breakers. I've seen some of the folks on this call lead thousands of people in recent marches and rallies. And I mean, it's been radical. Imagine the League 46 calls filled with the thousands of people that we just led on the streets to hit the doors and canvassing, socially distanced canvassing, in whatever healthy way to do it, and knock out the vote, stay in line, because we know voter suppression has been crazy across the board nationally. We know in Connecticut in particular, our primary is August 11th. I just want to inform folks just a little bit that the Secretary of State will be issuing absentee ballot applications in order to facilitate the process of doing absentee ballot voting for the August primary. I'm going to say to everyone on this call and anyone watching, we need to push our governor to figure out a plan for November. I am very much concerned that we are in limbo. The messaging is not clear. And those of us that have the power to do something and to make moves, I know they're going to be a little bit upset, but, we really have to ensure that we get a plan for November so that we can accommodate, I know, the historic numbers that will be coming out in the state of Connecticut and nationwide, of course, for this historic election. So for folks that will be joining this movement, we will be posting a Google form to sign up for the Connecticut chapter, but you can begin by going to the Joe Biden website /League 46, and you can sign up there. And also, of course, we have our folks from the Biden campaign that have joined us on tonight that you could, connect with, and we'll give everyone social media handles and emails at the end. But I saw Erick. Did you have something for us?
No, go ahead. I was gonna just chime in on at the end of Vincent's comments, and I'll just say it briefly. I think my point was going to be to follow up on this comment about there being space for everybody, right? I mean, the thing about Vice President Biden is he's proven this before, right? He's been in politics a long time. You don't get it right all the time. You can't. But and everybody evolves, and things change, and people's positions change. We learn from each other. The idea that we're going to punish people for evolving on things, I think, is wrong, right? But it's right now, I think, more importantly than anything else, is that we have a candidate running for president who is willing to listen to people, was willing to listen to people around him, willing to listen to the tone of the country and take those things into. We've seen his platform evolve even just from the time that the campaign started, because of input from the public. So I think it's really important that we remember that, and we use this opportunity to make sure that we are influencing this platform and the policy that we're looking to see happen.
And Erick, to that point, people have to remember Joe Biden is only as good as the Senate and House of Representatives and state legislatures and governors that he has behind him getting elected in November. If you want a version of a more comprehensive Medicare bill, if you want more criminal justice reform, if you want something done on the environment, if you want something done with equal pay, if you want something done that matters to you, it's a value to you, then you have to understand that it's not enough to just focus on Joe Biden, but think about your congressional leaders, think about those at the local level, because that's how we really get things done. We have to empower the system so that he can do things that we need done. And allow, when he has all the tools and the resources and he goes off and his administration does whatever needs to be done, that's when we're happy. That's when we really truly reach our pinnacle of being able to realize the dreams that we have and that we're all organizing around right now. But if he doesn't have those, you can't get upset at the system. That means that we have more work to do and we've got to work harder. So I just want people to keep that in your mind because, I heard a lot of young folks say, well, Bernie Sanders or other candidates, Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, they would have got this done. They would have got this done. Yeah. And then you would have been disappointed because if we didn't give them the Congress that they needed, we'd be back here all over again discussing this. So let's remember that there's a system in place here for a reason, and we've got to take care of the entire system and not just the White House.
Cory, to that point, really briefly, I was just going to. So I think when I mentioned kind of what's happening nationally right now, when we talk about Black Lives Matter, when we talk about the policy that people are pushing right now, I think the reason that this feels differently, because let's be real, right? Everybody on this call, we've seen this over and over and over again when another member of our community is gunned down or choked out in the street. When it's not on national news, when it's not being talked about, we see it. That hits home for us. The reason this has happened before, we've had protests and marches and rallies, we've done it. The reason this feels a little bit differently is that all of a sudden we have people who do not belong to our community, who are not on a day-to-day basis impacted by many of the things that we are, all of a sudden are taking interest, right? And that's why we're now providing support and backing for politicians to make decisions and to start talking about making real change that impacts us. For a long time, it's been really easy for people to try to look that aren't impacted by it to talk about these issues and think about it as racist rather than racism, right? An individual thing. It's how you treat someone. It's someone using the N-word. We all know that it's not about an individual. This is about systems, and it's about having those conversations. So making sure that we're providing the backing and this continued support. Don't let anybody tell you that being out in the street protesting and continuing to put this in the forefront of people's minds is not having a real impact on what's going on, because it is.
Just yesterday, I had a neighborhood association meeting, and at the end of the meeting, I had a Black Lives Matter conversation with them. These are all white people. I'm sure that they've never had that kind of conversation before in their life. And after the meeting, someone that I've been a friend to for a decade said to me, I never really thought about color until you door knocked my house and said, we need more people like me running for office, and you were our council person. And I said, well, why didn't you think about that? And he's like, well, I never really had to. And I'm like, that's the problem. That's exactly the problem. I will add that my perspective is slightly different than some of the opinions here when it comes to, the Biden, you're 100% in from the get-go. And I want to say that because most of you know, my Connecticut peers, that I was a Bernie supporter 100%. But I am here because I realize what is at stake, that things have changed. And my love for progressive values, my love for wanting to make sure that we have opportunities for young people to go to college, opportunities for affordable healthcare, that has not shifted just because I'm going into this presidential election clear-headed, knowing that we need a leader, knowing that we have to transition and we have to win. That has not changed. Those values are stronger than ever. I feel like in my community, after 10 years of giving so much effort of trying to educate people, that finally people are awakened. And that is in collaboration with this presidential election. It is not a coincidence. This is a time, like it was well said by Vincent and all of you before, the young people are out in droves because it's time. So if you're a progressive person, you know, the extra progressive like me, and you're wondering that you're going to skip out in the election or you're going to do a protest vote for Jill whoever, then you better think again. Because if you wake up the next day and we lose this, then that's on you.
Woo. And the church said, amen. So, anyone else have anything else you would like to add? Okay. Well, this has been a very powerful conversation. This will definitely be the first of many. More to come. And as I said, tonight was the formal rollout of our Connecticut chapter of League 46. If you'd like the information concerning the Joe Biden platform, please go to joebiden.com. If you'd like to host forums like this, just feel free when you go to that. First, you'll get a donation screen, donate, and then continue on to the website and hit the action center, and everything is laid out there. I'm telling you, it is so easy that a silly guy like me can even pull something like this off, right? It is easy to do. Part 2, then you go over a few tabs. You'll see League 46. You want to sign up for that because there's so much vital information that's going to be coming down the pike concerning what's happening on a national level. There are so many progressives that have been on so many different sides of this election that are a part of League 46. I can confirm that. I know that for almost a fact that this election is absolutely vital for us to be involved with. And if you are watching on my Alder page, Alder Brackeen Jr., I've already dropped the Connecticut League 46 forum, Google form there, and feel free to sign up there because we are about to have some actions. And I'm going to announce a few of those events and then allow the panelists to give their social media handles and ways to contact them. So first, we'll be having a statewide volunteers check-in call on July 14th. Oh, and I failed to mention that when you go to the Action Center, you can be directed to the Mobilize website where you'll see these events posted, or if you just like an easier way to do that, just follow me on my social media page. Then we will continue to have monthly check-ins, Connecticut Young Professionals for Biden virtual happy hours and action meetups. One will be held on July 16th. The next will be held in August and September. We haven't solidified those dates as we are just launching this event now. Also, we will be coming to a town and city near you. We have some volunteers and internship fairs that we'll be conducting virtually. Maybe eventually we can meet in person in a socially distanced way, but for now, we're going to continue to do the virtual approach. We will do a Stanford Volunteers and Internship Fair on July 18th at 11 a.m. There will be another event in Bridgeport, Volunteers Internship and Volunteer Fair on July 25th. There will be another one in Norwalk on July 25th, same day. And another on for Stratford Volunteers in July 26th, and we'll be rolling out other towns and cities over the next few days. If you've been following what's been going on over the last few months at this point, we've been having a great discussion concerning what the Black agenda is and what that looks like for our state and nationally. We have started our clergy chapter as well here for Connecticut for Biden, which was a robust one. We will continue that conversation with the interfaith community conversation with the emphasis on the Latino community. And we will also be acknowledging the Muslim community in this conversation on July 23rd at 7 p.m. And also on July 29th, we will be starting our Connecticut Educators and Educational Advocates for Joe Biden. That will be happening on July 29th. So I know, we're in a virtual universe. All of this has been happening virtually. Eventually, we're going to start hitting the ground running in a city near you. Probably not within the next few months, but hey, this is the best that we can do. And it is vitally important that we plug in and connect and share these events that are happening. And at this point, in the order that you introduce yourself, feel free to give your closing remarks and your social media handle and ways to contact you.
Daryl. Bible says the first shall be last, the last shall be first. How about we switch it up, please? Thank you.
All right, the last shall be first.
That's me. Eva Bermudez Zimmerman at Facebook, Eva Bermudez on Twitter, and Eva Bermudez also on Instagram. Although I'm a little bit more exclusive on the Insta. But don't forget to organize. As an organizer for 15 years now, that is the only way that we can make progress. Pass it along.
So me, I guess then. Kadeem Roberts, CT, on Instagram, Twitter, it's If You Dream It, Live It. And on Facebook, it's Kadeem Politician Roberts. But I definitely just want to end with saying thank you for being on this panel with all you elite people. You guys are amazing. You guys keep doing what you're doing. It's crazy now that, you now start to hear we need to hold politicians accountable. And we need to say, we need to make sure we need to put the right people in to vote, who we voting for and stuff like that. So I believe that from this conversation tonight, you guys are all qualified, man. You guys know what the next steps are to do. And I appreciate you guys. And just, keep breaking the barriers and keep putting on for not just, your people, but just the community in general. It means a lot to be here, and I'm appreciative.
So Erick Russell on Facebook and eruss11 on Instagram. Not great on any social media. I'm like an old man. So, but I appreciate everybody participating in this. It was a great conversation. I will say, to the extent that people can, please reach out to us, get involved in the party. Just like what we're talking about, influencing policy and influencing what's going on in terms of elected officials, it is the same thing with the party. We want to hear from people. We want younger folks involved. We want our minority communities to be more engaged in the party. I remember when I joined, I was shocked at the lack of diversity within the party. And it's actually one of the main reasons why I wanted to participate, is because I'm not in a position to complain about what's happening if I'm not willing to step up to the plate and get involved and do the work. So please feel free to reach out. And let's continue to build together and work together to make some real change. Appreciate it.
My Instagram is official TD McGee, and my Facebook is Councilwoman Trenee McGee. You can friend me on my personal page, Trenee McGee. I'm not on Twitter because, like Erick said, I'm a little bit of an old person too, so I don't tweet. But you can go to City Hall, westhavencityhall.com.org. You can find my telephone number, my email. Hit me up. I will talk about anything. Like I love conversation. I love learning about just everyone's walk of life. People are fascinating to me. So hit me up, email me, call me. We can talk politics or whatever else that you want to do, especially to my younger voters who are so passionate and on fire, my climate changers. Like, hit me up. I would love to talk more with you guys. And thank you so much, Daryl, League 46 CT. Your first official day. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this incredible conversation. Conversations are so important, and I always, no matter whether agree or disagree or whatever, I always learn and grow from them. I expand from them. That's what I want to do. I want to be a person who my focus is multidimensional. So I want it to grow and evolve. And when you know better, you do better, So I think these conversations are so important. And Kadeem, it's so nice to Zoom meet you. It's so awesome to see other Black people in their cities serving on city council. Like, I am not alone. And I always know that, but it's just great to meet people. So I'm excited for more conversation.
Okay, I just didn't want to be first since Daryl forced me before. I'm getting on them because we go back and forth like this all the time. But this was a real pleasure. I'm doing it for the nominee of a party, having a conversation with old friends and new friends. Trenee and Kadeem, I think it's important for you to know that The Connecticut Young Democrats, as we laid out a few weeks ago, announced that we are putting together a Build the Bench initiative to find young people all across this state and train them to run for office and to run campaigns and to organize. And we're putting money towards this over the next 2 years because we want people who look like you and who look like Erick and who look like Eva in positions of power making a difference. And you too, Daryl, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave you out of that. I apologize. But this is so important, and I'm so happy that we can be a part of this. My Facebook is Corey P. Paris. My Instagram is Corey P. Paris, and that's Paris like the city. And my Twitter, which I'm also an old person, and I don't really know how to use very well, is Corey P. Paris. But I would also encourage that you all like Instagram for CT Young Dems. And we have a lot of events happening this year, so we hope that you all be a part of that. And I'm counting on everyone in this group to be a part of that as well. So thank you.
And again, you can follow me on Facebook at Alder Brackeen Jr., on Twitter, D Brackeen Jr., and I actually will give a phone number, 203-479-2855. Again, that's 203-479-2855. We will be having a lot of phone banks and canvases, socially distanced canvases that'll be coming up, and opportunities for folks. So that's why I wanted to drop that number. And please connect with each and every one of these folks that are on this Zoom call, because we are all united. We all intend on supporting each other and moving forward in all of the spaces and areas that we are in. So have a wonderful night, folks.